Hey guys, Jeffries here, and welcome to the second episode of Football Manager 2014 Who to Buy. Now, the last episode was, of course, the first episode, and we looked at Whitehawk in the Skrill South. Now, a lot of the players I suggested could also be signed for Skrill North teams, providing you got the right budget and the right reputation, but then that differs with so many different teams in the leagues. Bearing in mind there is 22 teams in the league, I believe. Times that by 2 for the two leagues, and you get an idea of how many different combinations of budgets and things like that there can be. So I gave you what Whitehawk can do, which are a pretty average team for that league. Now today I'm going to look at what I thought was a pretty average team for the league, but it turns out on this game turned out to be one of the favourites for promotion. However, in real life they did not get promotion, and therefore I feel as though these are actually a realistic team to be looking at, and that is Kidderminster Harriers. Now, being a Steamish fan, like I am, we've had some run-ins with Kidderminster in the past. The last time we played Kidderminster was a nice little friendly affair though, so I've always had a good feeling for Kidderminster. They were very gracious to us when we won the league at their ground, so there's a mutual respect for me to Kidderminster. So I thought I'd give it a go, have a look at their team and see what I can do. Now, I've already done the staff list. All of these staff members I've hired myself. So you'll see the familiar faces here of Paul Bennett, who is my assistant manager yet again. Gavin Tate, who is now my head scout. I think it was Ian Maybury in the last game, but for some reason I couldn't convince him to sign for me on this game. But again, I mean that shows this game's strength in that every single time you load this game up, it is a different combination. You never quite get the same thing twice. Which is good, it's cool. You might have noticed some other names on here, like Robert Perez as a coach. Now, I've just bigged the game up saying how good it is, but I think in some ways it's also a little unrealistic, because I don't think Robert Perez would actually drop this far down to get a coaching job. But there you go. He is here, he is on our coaching team. We've also got Darren Hayes as a goalkeeping coach. He's got a goalkeeping rating of 20, which is awesome for a non-league goalkeeping coach. We got Chris Malkin as our head physio. He's got physio rating of 16, which is also pretty good. Director of football, we got Pat Willett, who I believe we looked at in the last episode. I can't remember off the top of my head. And head of youth development, we got David Hockaday. Now I want to highlight this in particular because I said in the last episode about looking for head of youth development who have good coaching stats as well as good scouting stats, and you can see I've sacrificed a little bit on the scouting front in order to get these coaching stats. And we got a really good working with youngsters rating. And if any of you out there are thinking, David Hockaday, that name sounds familiar. He was at Forest Green. He's not going to be listed on here because it's only towards the back end of last season that he was at Forest Green. He is now the manager of Leeds United, David Hockaday. So yeah, I guess you could say that he made a huge step up in his career. And, you know, I say good luck to him because not everybody has the opportunity. And as he said himself, when you get a phone call from Leeds, you're not exactly going to turn it down, are you? Now, maybe it is on here actually. Yeah, Forest Green, there you go. Joining us as head of youth development. So that's pretty cool. We got a pretty decent guy joining us there. Now, if I go into the training screen, I'll just set my my usual pre-season training up. Yep, I'll leave that as it is. I'll do that quickly. Now, this is the screen I want to look at the most. This is an improvement from my Whitehawk team. I didn't actually show you how my Whitehawk team appeared on the training screen. I tried to ignore that bit because it wasn't very good. But that's because of the board's limitations, not because I couldn't find the right scouts and coaches and physios and things like that. When you're only allowed a maximum of 2 coaches, you really do try and squeeze the best that you possibly can in every area out of those coaches, which means you end up with sort of 1.5, maybe 2 stars in each area, which is kind of what we've got here as well. Here we're only allowed a maximum of 3, and that includes physios, of course. So we've got a head physio, a goalkeeping coach, and a first team coach, and that is it. That is all we've got, and that's all we're allowed. So we made the best that we possibly could of a bad situation, really. And, you know, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. The only thing I'd like really is a fitness coach, but then we sacrifice the attacking and defending side of it. And as it stands at the moment, Pires kind of covers that sort of thing. We got 1.5 stars. Everything else is 2 stars. And over here for handling, 2.5 stars, which is good. That is good to see. In fact, we got 2.5 stars here as well. And that's from Darren Hayes giving us that. So this is it as a basic starter. We're now going to start looking at some players again. And the first player I'm going to look at once again is Victor Zapata. Because I believe now, there you go, now he's interested in joining because we've jumped up a league. So I'm going to stick that in, put him up on the list. Another player. Again from the last episode. Richie Baroilhay. And again, he's interested in signing. We'll try and negotiate his wage a little bit. So I can get him on 600 a week. There we go. Something else that Kidderminster have, which Whitehawk didn't, is a transfer budget. So that means we can actually go into this list here. We can go scouted recommendation. We'll start with contract status, but we'll also put transfer status. Get that ready. Pop this. Whoops. Pop this like that. And we got a lot more players available. So, for instance, this guy here, who I've already actually bid for, Dean Santangelo. Very good young goalkeeper. I might have mentioned him before, actually. I think I signed him for my Fleetwood team in my The Basics series. I think I did. But yeah, he's got pretty decent stats, and he's actually touted to be a good championship goalkeeper in the future. He's Iranian. Not that that matters. His nationality has no effect on whether I'd sign him or not. So yeah, he looks good. Other players, we've got Antoine Gounet, who's another goalkeeper, although I don't think he's quite as good as Santangelo. Steve Howard, who I believe used to play for Reading. Nope, Leicester. I meant Leicester. I don't know why I said Reading. Brian Howard, I think I'm thinking of, used to play for Reading. Steve Howard used to also play for Luton and Northampton and Derby, Hartlepool, Sheffield Wednesday. You know, good player. Good player. 186 goals in 692 games and a total transfer fee of 2.7 million, which is pretty good. He could play in League 2 still. Although I think that's his limit, that's his ceiling. So again, you know, it's all about what kind of players you want, really. I tend to go for the versatile players who can play in more than one position. So Miguel Dominguez springs out to me. Again, Stevenage fan. He did play for Stevenage. Played 21 games for us. He also played for Colorado Rapids under Gary Smith, which is why he then joined us at Stevenage. Used to play for Cardiff back in the day as well, if anyone remembers him playing for Cardiff back in 2008 or 2009, and Swindon the season before that. Apart from that, he's pretty much played his football abroad. Bit of a stint at Carlisle, although he never actually played a game for them, and then 7 matches for Southend. He's a good versatile player. I'll get him in on trial for pre-season, but he's a good left back / right back, depending on what position you want him to play in. Another player, Grant Basie. If there are any Stevenage fans out there who are watching these videos, you might remember Grant Basie from his time at Barnet. I don't want you guys to be put off signing him, because he can be a really good versatile defender / midfielder, as you can see here. And he's got really good stats, and he's actually good enough to play in League 2 and can become a decent League 1 left back. But me and any other Stevenage fan out there, I always remember when he used to play for Barnet. Basically what happened was Stevenage's goalkeeper just did a speculative punt up the field, and Basie chased it down and did what you would normally do, is he tried to knock it back to his goalkeeper because it bounced about 2-3 yards outside the box, maybe a bit further than that, actually, maybe about 10 yards outside the box where it first bounced. By the time it came to him, it was about 5 yards outside the box. All he tried to do was knock it back to his keeper. What he ended up doing was knocking it over his keeper's head and into the back of the net for an own goal. It was one of the funniest own goals I've ever seen. It was probably one of the best own goals I've ever seen, if there is such a thing. And it earned him a bit of a reputation. He was unfortunately released by Barnet at the end of that season, but he went to Wickham, and the very next season he scored a penalty against Stevenage, once again at Stevenage's ground, but not at the same end where he scored the own goal. But he certainly made up for it, and all of us laughing at him. So we fell for that one. However, he is a good player. He is a good defender. He's made a pretty good career for himself. If we go into his history, started at Charlton, played a few games for Charlton, had a loan spell at Brentford, a few more games for Charlton. There's the Barnet stint that I was talking about. He then played for Peterborough and Wickham. So, yeah, good player. Good player, can't argue with that. So yeah, we'll put him on the list of players to sign. Other players, well, no one really on this list is really speaking to me. We got this guy here, Mezzagay, who is a good player, but 29 years old. I think we can get someone just as good as him, but younger. And I know just the guy. Providing I can spell his name right. I think that's how you spell his name. There he is. Yoan Weiren. I think I'm pronouncing his first name right. Yoan. Young player. Pretty decent young player. Can make the step up into the team. I don't think we actually have a scout report for him. Whoops. If I can click the right thing. Again, stats don't look brilliant. However, you can retrain him to play as a cam or a DM. Mainly a cam. Sometimes a DM. Again, it depends on the luck of the draw. But if you get him in the right position, he can be a real asset for you. One thing I haven't looked at actually is Kidderminster players who we've already got. Looking down the list, who looked good? Anthony Malbon. Now I've actually signed him in the past for my Whitehawk team, and that was after I'd been promoted to the Skrill Premier. Kidderminster let him go, and I signed him up. And he is a good player. Scores goals. Scored a few goals for me actually. Played alongside Zapata for much of the season, because Baroil Hay got injured, unfortunately. So I ended up signing Malbon, and he did good for me. However, I wouldn't recommend him if you've already got lots of strikers, because he will just end up warming your bench. And that's not saying he's a bad player. It's just saying I would rather choose Zapata and Baroil Hay as a strike partnership. Who else have we got on here? Ryan Rowe. I'm trying to think of players who I recognise, and there aren't actually that many, to be honest. I'm not a big... what's the word I'm looking for? Not a big know-how kind of guy when it comes to Kidderminster. Nearly all of the players I know who used to play for Kidderminster now play elsewhere. For example, James Constable. Scored twice for Kidderminster against Stevenage in the FA Trophy final in 2007. I believe it was, or maybe it was even 2005. I can't remember now. I think it was 2007 springs to mind. I think it was 2007. He then went to Oxford, and he's either still at Oxford or he's gone somewhere else. I can't remember off the top of my head. So yeah, not really that knowledgeable. I've heard of Michael Gash because he scored in the FA Cup last season, and with a surname like that, you can't really ignore a player like that. But yeah, what I'm going to do now, guys, it's the same as I did in the last episode. I'm going to make a cut here, go away, try and sign some players, come back when I've signed players like Zapata and Barrel Hay and Weiren, and show you guys what I've done. So I will see you in a minute. Okay guys, so we are back, and I have a few players to show you. So let's go into the transfer history. Okay, so we signed players like Weiren, Zapata, Santangelo, and Baroil Hay. I say his name different every time I pronounce it. Baroil Hay. Now we've got a couple of loanees as well. Joan Gesson, who from the last episode I said was a really good utility player. You can see it there on the top left corner of that little box that's just come up. And Ashley Harris on loan from Portsmouth. Now, he's a player I like to describe as a real hidden gem, in that I really like Harris as a striker. He's got an awesome free kick ability, which is there. Free kick taking is 13. That tends to pop up to about 15 or 16 if you develop him properly. He used to take all my free kicks. when I did my You Don't Win Anything with Kids series, I used to talk a lot about my Portsmouth Test career before I started that series. Harris was one of my star players for the first 4 seasons of that career. As I got higher and higher up the leagues, and especially as I got promoted from the Championship to the Premier League, he did get promoted with me. I kept him in my team for another couple of seasons, but he did drop a little bit down the pecking order. However, if you're looking for a player to get you from a league like this, especially into the Football League, and then higher up than that, even up as far as the Championship, he is your man. Having said that, when you do come to sell him, you can still earn quite a tidy amount of money for him, so it's always worth having a look at bringing him in. He's only 5'8", so he's not very good in the air, although he's not got bad heading. And somewhere on here, jumping reach, not so good. But he's not the slowest player on the pitch. He's got pretty decent speed to him. Like I said, he's got good free kick taking. He's got pretty decent first touch, corners. He's a set piece man, basically. And I tried to get one of his teammates in on loan as well, Danny East, who does pop up on the list. If you go to Portsmouth here and you go team report, he does pop up on the list. However, rejected me basically, decided that he wasn't that interested after all. Right, what other players on this list sprung out to me? Ibrahim Farah looks like a good proposition. Again, really good midfielder in terms of versatility. Can play all over the midfield. However, no, don't want stats, I want scout report. He's only a leading star for Skrill Premier sides, and you may have seen it on the screen just now. If I go back here, Shane Byrne. Now he's a midfielder as well. Not quite as versatile as Farah, but you know, stats wise, very, very good. And if you look at this, he is a good signing for League 2 teams. So definitely I would rather have Byrne than Farah. No offence, Farah. Of course. Who else have we got on here that sprang out to me? Well, James Shea, goalkeeper, ex-Arsenal. Could have perhaps been good, but if you scroll up just one, you've got Alan Martin here, who just been released from Crewe. Had a pretty decent career actually. He played for teams like actually he never played for Motherwell, but Leeds. I think he might have played some games. No games for Leeds either. A few for Accrington, a few for Barrow. 2 loan spells at Barrow he had. Ayr played for, and played a few games for Crewe. Now I'm going to put him on the trial list because I like him. He's a really good player. Good for League 2 teams. Could become a League 1 goalkeeper. Slightly better than Sant'Angelo. However, budget-wise, wage budget, we're a little bit lacking right now. Last thing I want to show you in this episode is loan list. Again, because we're playing a league higher than we were before, in the last episode, sorry, then you get a few more players appearing on the loan list. Players like Grant Smith, who again is a really good young goalkeeper, who I actually ended up signing for my Whitehawk team. So, you know, he's a good player. He is a good player. We've also got this goalkeeper here, Ross Fitzsimmons from Crystal Palace, and you're getting teams like Palace and Blackburn and Brighton coming up on this list now, whereas before you'd get teams like Harrow or, you know, maybe a League 2 team at maximum. And even if you go on the transfer list, well, I did have players on the transfer list before, maybe they all went. But, you know, we got some pretty decent players appearing on these lists now, which is always encouraging. So yeah, it's good to see. There's Trani again, who we signed in the last episode for Whitehawk. Again, not as recommended on this one. If you sign him for Whitehawk and get promoted with Whitehawk, or a team like Whitehawk and get promoted with them, he is a very, very good keeper for Skrill Premier sides. However, for me, given that I have the choice of better keepers, excuse me, keep yawning. for some strange reason. Yeah, if you have a choice of better keepers, I always go for them. Try and get the best players you can that fit within your budget, is my motto. So it doesn't have to always be the best player with the best stats if they're going to break the bank. Go for the next player down who's a little bit cheaper, because you're only sacrificing a tiny amount in stats to get the budget. There's only one other player whose name springs out, and unfortunately it's this man here, Chris Cumming-Bart. I'm sure you can work out why his name sticks out. I won't go into that in too much detail. Right, guys, I am going to end this episode here because I think I've nattered for long enough with different players. Once again, I've shown you how to get a half-decent staff lineup. These are all full-time contracts, whereas with Whitehawk they're part-time contracts. Again, board limitations get in the way a little bit in terms of how many staff members you're allowed and little things like that. But on the player front, we got a pretty decent team building up here, and I'm quite pleased with what we're doing. So I'm looking forward to putting this team into action. Once again though, guys, I can either give you a January update, so I can show you guys how this team performs and once again prove that these are decent players to sign, or I can just leave it here. So drop a comment in the comment section below, let me know what you guys want to see, and I will basically follow whatever you guys want. Until then, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, be sure to click the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to my channel, thank you guys for your continued support, and until next time, I will see you soon.